Do you ever wonder that every love stories in the world are the same? Well, in today's video, I'm going to share with you 4 most famous Chinese folk love stories. Have you ever heard this piece of music before? It was composed based on the theoretical adaptation of today's first story, Liang Zhu. The story is often be seen as the Chinese version of Romeo and Juliet. Long time ago in the dynasty of Jin, there was a girl named Zhu Yingtai. She loves reading books and writing poems. All she wanted to do is go to school and learn about literature. But at that time, women are not allowed to go out by themselves. And read no books, learn no literature is considered as a virtue for girls at that time. In despite of all those shackles for women, Zhu decided to dress up as a man and go to the school in the next county. And on her way there, she met Liang Shanbo, and they hit it off instantly, like they were old friends, or in this case, they were like soulmates. So they decided to go to the school together, and later in the next 3 years, they lived and studied together as good friends or best friends. And during that time, Liang never found out that Zhu was a girl, kind of like Mulan. But good times end fast. Due to her family issues, Zhu was forced to come back home. And Liang later went to their home, want to see his best friend, only find out that his best friend was a girl. And friendship became love. But Liang was too late. Zhu Yingtai was already asked to marry to the governor's son, Ma Wencai. Due to the status of the governor's family, it's impossible to quit this engagement. Liang and Zhu was forced to break up. Sometime later, Liang became county's magistrate and worked under the governor. But being at this state didn't really help him. He fell ill because he just missed Zhu so much, and he never recovered from that. He died not long after. He was later buried at a place called Xu. And days passed. It's finally the time Zhu get married, and on her way there, she passed Xu, where is Liang buried. And suddenly a big wind came from nowhere, stopped them, and Zhu finally got the chance for the first time to see her love, although it's in a tomb. But as she approached the tomb suddenly collapsed, and she jumped into it without any hesitation. Moments later, 2 butterflies came out, flying together, and left the world. So the legend of Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai mainly portrays the Asian people's yearning for free and beautiful life, and their pursuit for freedom and love, especially for those suppressed women. And for the next story, is the most adapted story in film and television. Maybe because this story has love, has monsters, and action sequences. The story goes, during the time of Song Dynasty, there was a 1,000-year-old snake demon. Well, that's our main character, the snake demon. She called herself Bai She, and in gratitude for the scholar Xu Xian, who saved her life in his past lives, she took into a human form to repay him. Later, she encountered another snake demon, which is green, so she called her Xiaoqing, which means little green. These two formed a companionship. Bai Shuzhen used her magical powers and her tactics to meet Xu Xian, and finally she married him. After their marriage, a monk, Fa Hai, from the Golden Mountain Monastery revealed to Xu Xian that his wife is a snake demon. But Xu Xian was not convinced, so the monk Fa Hai taught him a little trick. He made Bai Shuzhen a little drink with rigor in it. In the legend, snakes are afraid of this kind of herbal medicine. So the drinker forced her to reveal herself as what she is, a really big white snake. And her true form frightened Xu Xian to death. In order to save her husband, Bai Suzhen later snuck into the heavenly realm and steal some immortal grass for him to drink, get her and finally get him back from the dead. But the monk Fa Hai deceived Xu Xian and lured him into his own monastery and imprisoned him. In order to save him, Bai Suzhen along with Xiaoqing, they fought Fa Hai and flooded the monastery, which caused many people and many creatures to death. Bai Suzhen was captured by Fa Hai for violating celestial laws and all the harmful she's done. After she gave her birth to her son, she was sealed permanently under the Leifeng Pagoda. But later, Bai Suzhen's kid grew up into a top scholar and came back to save her mother. He came to the pagoda and successfully rescued his mother, and the family was reunited. So, some interesting facts. Leifeng Pagoda is a real pagoda that's located in Hangzhou, next to the West Lake, and it was collapsed in 1924 and rebuilt in 2000. When it collapsed, many people say it's Bai Suzhen is finally get free. And now it's some kind of tourist attraction. And the third story came from stars. And the star you may know as Altair and Vega. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. These two stars, in our perspective, they look at each other across the Milky Way. So let's see how the ancient Chinese people interpreted this story in their language. So according to the legend, long time ago, there was a boy named Niulang, and his parents died really early, and his brothers and his sister-in-law always abused him. All he got is a really old cow. But this cow is no ordinary cow, it's a magical cow. And one day the old cow wanted to thank him and came up an idea for him so that he could marry to a god fairy, Zhinyu, also known as the Weaver Girl. On the day that the cow said, the beautiful celestial maidens were all come from sky and bathed in a pond. But what they didn't know was Niulang was there too, hiding the reeds, and he took away Zhinyu's clothes. His sudden appeal frightened all the celestial maidens, and they all ran away. But Zhinyu, her clothes was taken away, so she has to stay. This is a really rogue behavior, and we should not imitate that. We should never do those kind of things to girls we don't know. But let's just first keep on the story. We can judge this at the end. So Zhinyu was left behind, and Niulang was pleading, like sincerely, that she could marry him. Well, this is not a very good story at this time. Finally, Zhinyu said yes, so they got married, and surprisingly, Niulang was actually an honest and hardworking man, and they lived happily together. Niulang was working on the fields, growing crops, and Zhinyu was do her weaving work. And they even had two kids. But, well, time passes and the old cow is dying. And his last wish is for them to keep its hide after he's dead. He said it will be useful when they face any danger. Although Niulang and Zhinyu were reluctant to do so, but the old cow insisted, so they kept its skin after his death and buried him. Well, not long after that, the Jade Emperor, who was the Zhinyu's father, learned about this, and he was furious that a mortal man, a poor man, married her immortal and beautiful daughter. And he sent soldiers to take Zhinyu back. Upon returning home, Niulang found out that Zhinyu was gone. He thought about what the cow said and took his hide and started a journey to go after Zhinyu. And as they were about to catch up, the godmother, the queen mother, took out his golden hairpin, and just a single sweep, the once peaceful Milky Way became raging with waves. So Niulang can no longer get across. So from then on, two sides at the Milky Way just look at each other and weeping. Many days, many years later, the Jade Emperor and the godmother finally gave up. They could not resist their sincere feelings, and they allowed them to meet once a year at the seventh day of the seventh lunar month. So that was the beginning of the traditional Chinese Valentine's Day, the seventh day of the seventh lunar month. So the legend says in that day, the magpies from the earth flew up to the Milky Way and built a bridge for Niulang and Zhinyu to meet up. Well, this story might not be a really good influence in nowadays. Well, the Niulang's approach and the story is kind of like Stockholm syndrome. Although the after marriage life was pictures to be really good, but the whole story is kind of outdated for today's point of view, or at least what I think. So let's go to the very last story. And this one might be the oldest among the four stories. It's less about a love story, but more about fighting tyranny. Legend says Meng Jiang Nv was born in a melon and was beautiful and smart, clever, and thoughtful. And it was the time when Qin Shi Huang was ruled the country, and he was catching people to build the Great Wall he was always want to build. Meng Jiang met and fell in love with a scholar, but just days after they were married, her husband was taken away from her by force to build the Great Wall to become a labor. Although it's almost like no hope that he's coming back, she kept waiting. Day after day, she waited for a whole year, and she decided not to take it anymore. So she prepared some warm clothes for her husband and started the journey to seek him at the Great Wall. After a long and difficult journey, she finally arrived at the Great Wall, where it's still on construction. She arrived there with hope, but bad news hit her. Her husband died due to exhaustion and starvation. She asked for his body, but the truth was even more devastating. His body was buried under the wall with thousands of other people. She could not take it, and she started crying under the wall for days. And finally, it's almost like the wall heard her crying. The wall just collapsed and revealed all the dead bodies under it, where she finally found her husband. And when she was doing this, Qin Shi Huang was just around. And after he heard about this, he came here. He wanted to kill her himself. But after seeing her, she's beautiful and young, he changed his mind. He wanted to take her as his own. But Meng Jiang was smart. She tricked him into doing three things for her. He would bury her husband properly and mourn him, and finally take her to the sea. Qin Shi Huang did the first two and took her to the sea, thinking she's finally his. But to his surprise, she jumped. She threw herself into the sea and died. Or in some version, she was saved by the Dragon King under the sea. This story uses a love story to accuse the severe issues of forced labor under tyranny, especially the hardship faced by people during major projects like the construction of the Great Wall. The Great Wall we see now is actually built in Ming Dynasty. And as for why this story happened in Qing Dynasty, well, Qin Shi Huang, although he was the first emperor, his first Huangdi in history, and he is indeed a tyrant, and he killed many scholars and burned many books. So it is possible that the scholars later on they just didn't like him and want to put all those bad things up on him. These stories might look a little outdated, but they have the ability to endure and evolve even after years, and which suggests they have their own significance. They showed some suppressed fundamental desires for Asian people, ranging from love freely to more political one like the last one to accuse the tyranny. So if you are interested in Chinese old stories, you can watch this video. I put it here where I introduce you to 5 fable stories that is very famous in China. That'll be today's video, and I will see you soon.